Chapter 13, this is a peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system, remember, is anything that is not central nervous system, so anything that is not the brain or the spinal cord. That means that if it is the first branches off of the brain, peripheral. If it's the first branches off of the spinal cord, peripheral. Anything that's actually connected to the nervous system, anywhere all the way down to the tips of your fingers and the tips of your toes. This is providing links to anything outside. So basically any sensation or any receptors that you have from external environments are going to be associated with this peripheral nervous system. Any feelings that you have, any emotions really that come through are going to be stemming from stimulation from the outside. So they can be said to have a peripheral track also. Taste, smell, touch, all of those are going to have links to the outside world that are going to be sending information into the brain. So they are traveling via the peripheral nervous system. If you remember back in chapter 11, you notice that we have this kind of a flow chart here. There is my central nervous system, which is kind of in itself, the brain and the spinal cord. Then I've got the peripheral nervous system, and you notice that there's different levels and different branches with the peripheral nervous system. First of all, we've got our sensory or afferent division, which is sending information to the brain and the spinal cord. Remember, this is afferent, to the brain and the spinal cord. If you follow the blue arrows, it only goes one way. Then the red arrows are going to be following the motor pathways. That is going to be any efferent division. This is information that's going from the brain and the spinal cord down to the different parts of the body. Now the motor division does get separated into somatic and autonomic. And if you remember back from somatic, what I mentioned about this is having anything to do with voluntary structures. So if I were going to put information as to what somatic would be, I would say this would be like our skin and our skeletal muscles. The autonomic nervous system is going to be using the involuntary. Okay, good. So involuntary structures. Involuntary structures are going to be things like cardiac and smooth muscle. They're more internal. They're automatic. We don't have to control them, right? They're all the time working. Then, of course, there's two divisions of the autonomic nervous system. There's sympathetic and parasympathetic, of which we'll get more into in chapter 14, so you don't have to worry about it as much right now. All right, let's talk a little bit about receptors. Your body has tons of receptors, and those receptors are able to be stimulated. Anytime there is a sensation or a stimulation from anywhere, our body is going to gather information, and it's going to send that impulse or information to the brain to be dealt with. So what we do is we take a stimulation or a sensation, and we interpret the meaning of it. That's where perception comes in. Now, if you remember way back to chapters, I believe 9 or so, in the muscle section, we were talking about sensation and perception, and we were able to kind of determine how the body was sending signals through these action potentials. And all we need to do is have our brain interpret those stimulus. So if you smell something, we create an interpretation. If we feel something, we create an interpretation. And all our body does is makes these judgments based on what they are. There's a few different types of receptors. First of all, they're going to be determined by the complexity of the structure. We're going to see some that have really, really great myelination, or that the Schwann cells that are wrapping around. We have some that are named, or they're classified for the location where they're found. And then there's others that are going to be classified by the type of stimulus they detect. So let's talk a little bit about each one of those real quick. First of all, the stimulus type. We can see mechanical receptors, which respond to touch. We have thermoreceptors, of course, talking about temperature. Photoreceptors, dealing with light. There's chemical receptors, dealing with chemicals. And then nociceptors all the time are having to deal with pain. And pain comes in a couple different forms. Typically, we think of pain as being either pressure or being from temperature. So those extreme temperatures, those those thermoreceptors actually turn kind of with the nociceptors and allow us to interpret pain in the form of heat or of cold. Another type of pain that we can feel is a chemical pain, and that does cause burns sometimes also, but it's a different type. Those are going to go more with our chemoreceptors or responding to those chemicals. The next way we can classify these receptors is by their location. There's 3 different types, but really it's basically 2 types. There's exteroceptors and interoceptors. An exteroceptor is responding to any stimulus outside of the body, so that's anything that is going to allow for you to touch it, or see it, or taste it, or smell it. Those are any receptors that are coming from anywhere in your external environment, right? Our socioeconomic environment is being stimulated all the time, visually, or auditorily, or even with olfaction. And so that's why you'll notice that most of our special sense organs are here. If you remember your special senses, they are vision, hearing, equilibrium, balance, taste, and smell. An interoceptor is the opposite of that. That's any stimulus that we're going to get from internal environment. So the body is responding to any changes that are taking place, and sometimes it's not comfortable, but most of the time it's a chemical change or it's a blood vessel that is responding to any type of decision that's being made in the body. A lot of times you'll notice there's temperature changes. So if my body starts to increase in temperature, we create a change. We learned about that way back in chapter 1, right? If our body gets too warm, we start to sweat. If our body gets too cold, we start to shiver. Then the last one is a proprioceptor, and I said before, really just the interior and exteroceptors are the most important ones, but these proprioceptors do tell your body when movement takes place, and so you can see they respond to muscles and joints and ligaments. As far as the last way that we can classify them, it's by their receptor structure, and that means they're either going to be general senses or special senses. General senses is touch, and if you look at touch, there's pressure, there's vibration, there's stretch, there's temperature, there's pain. Those are all your tactile sensations. The general senses, your special senses, as I said just a second ago, are vision, hearing, equilibrium, smell, and taste. Back in chapter 1, we talked about some dependencies that our body has upon survival. And remember, sensation and perception are always going to be part of that. Your sensation, being able to detect a change, is a pretty essential portion of survival, because if we don't create an opinion to that change, it could really be harmful to our bodies. Think about being outside in an extremely cold environment and having just your shorts and a t-shirt on. If you are not aware of the changes that are happening in the external environment, it's going to cause bodily damage to you, or potentially even harm your rate of survival. So that's why I say perception is important also, because your perception is your interpretation of the stimulus. How does your body respond to those changes that are taking place? Well, what do? We take impulses or inputs from exteroceptors, from interoceptors, from proprioceptors, and we send information to our brain, and then we process it. Once we process it, we then can send information back through our somatosensory system, which is serving all your limbs of the body, and we can decide, hey, you know what, it's too cold, let's go back inside. As far as integrating, we have receptor levels and circuit levels and perceptual levels, and essentially what this is talking about is just our different levels of receptors or processing pathways. At the receptor level, it's always sensory, right? We're gathering information and we're sending it to the brain. That's an afferent pathway. The circuit level is our processing. The ascending pathways typically are in the central nervous system or the spinal cord. And then, of course, your perceptual level of perceptions, it's all cortical understanding. It's making sure that we can decide how to interpret that response and then produce some type of information going back to our arms or our legs or our receptor areas. In order to produce that sensation, we just simply have to send an action potential, We've discussed action potentials at length, so I don't want to get too far into them right now, but just remember we're going to have a brief reversal in the polarity of the cell. Typically it moves about 100 millivolts, so it's going from, in general sense, negative 70 to about up to positive 30, and that initiation of action potential is what allows for the transduction to occur. That is, a stimulus is applied, and then action potential is fired off. All right, let's move on. Main aspects of perception. We can have a couple different ways of recognition. If you think about things that you recognize already, we can recognize patterns, right? If I sit down, I get in the car and I go somewhere, I hear a piece of music and I think, oh yes, I like this song. Okay, that's recognition of a significant pattern, melodies. We also have something called quality discrimination, and the quality discrimination is our ability to detect just little subtle differences in sensations, such as being able to detect differences in tastes. And then your feature abstraction is identifying complex stimulus. Some of those complex stimuluses that we can detect are pain. Now, all of us have felt pain before, and whether that's physical pain or emotional pain. When we have pain impending on us, it's typically a warning sign. I know most of us probably don't think about this, but the actual first physical pain that you ever feel is a pressure. Before there's ever any pain there was a pressure. Even if it's somebody squeezing on your arm or as severe as a gunshot wound, the first pain that your body would interpret is a pressure. So the pressure that comes there is going to start warning us that there's potentially some type of damage coming. So what do? We send an impulse to the brain, and it creates either an opioid or an endorphin to try to block that pain. And if it's not able to block the pain, that's when we start to hurt. Now, some of you have a really high, what we call pain tolerance. Pain tolerance is the ability to withstand the pressures or pains that are coming through. Others of you are very sensitive to pain. I know for me, I'm really sensitive to pain, and I'm a sissy, and I don't like to get hurt. But, that's just me. Oops. Some of you have maybe heard about this phenomenon called phantom limb pain. Phantom limb pain is a really interesting sensation that doctors are actually starting to treat now. And what these patients are feeling is an intense or chronic pain that's happening in a limb that's no longer even present. We see this a lot with our war veterans that come back with injuries. They notice, oh, I have a pain in my foot. And someone will say, but you don't have a foot there. And so it makes them really uncomfortable, of course, because there's no longer a limb there, yet they're still feeling this painful experience. So what doctors are starting to do now is giving epidurals. Yep, just like they give to birthing mothers. They give them an epidural to help get rid of the pain that's there. Referred pain is also interesting. Most of us have heard of referred pain because we know that there's things. If I were to ask you a question, where does it hurt if someone has a heart attack? Most of you will say, oh, in their left arm or even up into their jaw. That's called referred pain. And there's lots of referred pain that happens in the body. Let me show you this chart here. If you look at a heart, there's referred pain all the way up and down the left arm on the inside here and up into the jaw. If there's liver problems, typically in that region, look at where the kidneys are going to refer pain all over the abdominal region. So that's why you'll notice if somebody has kidney stones, it's a very painful experience. Another one that I thought was interesting is how the liver can express itself up into the right shoulder, as well as the gallbladder. And some of you may have noticed pain in different regions of the body from different things, but some of them are a little bit more localized. If you'll notice, the bladder is here, the appendix on the right side of the body. But that's referred pain.